When I was broke, I had rich habits. When I was broke, I had rich habits.
There it is.
Thank you.
The applause. The crowd goes nuts. What's going on, Neal? Thanks, everyone, for joining us again. I feel like I'm an anchor of an important news.
As he taps his paperwork on the
Thanks
desk.
for joining us.
Episode 17.
Yes, we checked. We did our research.
Wrote it
This episode.
down so we didn't mess it up.
Yeah.
Master Keys, Neal and Andreino,
Chandler Haliburton, yeah.
And how you doing?
On? Good, man. Good. Same old. Just grinding away. Got some stuff in the works, trying to figure out what to buy next, which is always a fun problem to have, but trying to figure it out. And, now that I've cleared up a little bit of capital, or I'm in the process of clearing up a little capital like we talked about in the last episode, I think.
Yeah.
I've got to figure out how best to allot that. I've got some that I've got to put for the project. I've got some going to invest into this new building. But there's a little extra cash there, and I'm wondering if maybe I can spread that out and pick up something else. And do I want to do that in this climate? And all these questions, I don't know. Neal shook his head.
I'm shaking my head. You can't hear it on the mic, but I'm shaking my head.
What are you implying?
Hold your cash.
Hold the cash.
Global recession. It's all going down.
This
It's
is
all
something
over.
I think we've gently touched on this a couple times. Your fear of what's to come with the global economy. I don't know if we want to dive into that here off the hop, but
We're not going to go through it today, but we're going to do a couple episodes on it because I am freaking out. Literally losing my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Things are changing fast. There are so many issues going on in the background that I think we're being, I don't know how to say, it's being kind of numbed out to us. We're not noticing it because of the way that corporations have things set up and kind of the lifestyle that we lead. And we're in a first world country that everything's kind of handled well. But in the back end, everything's crumbling.
and I think a lot of people kind of look at their little box.
Yeah.
And everyone in the little box right now, a lot of people in their own micro box is doing very well all of a sudden out of this pandemic of
Yes.
doom and gloom and oh my gosh, how are we going to survive this? Certainly us in the real estate world, the sales, we're in a nice little box doing great. If you're
Yeah.
in contracting, you're in a nice little box doing really well.
Yeah.
A lot of other small operators that I know, they're doing well, but there's this underlying thing in all of those, which is a supply problem.
Whether
And
it be
that's-
people, materials, products, it's crazy. It's crazy. The more I find out, it's a serious issue. Like I was saying to you when we walked in, guys like Walmart, Superstore, Sobeys, their back end warehouses are emptying out and they're just keeping the shelves. So for us, that's why we're not feeling it. We go to Superstore, I can still get my bananas and crackers. It doesn't matter. Everything's still there. You know what I mean? But in the back end, that shelf might not be as packed as it used to be. Right now, it's only 2 boxes of crackers deep versus 8, and out back they got none.
There's a cracker shortage.
There's a cracker shortage, so prepare yourself. Get your cracker. If you want crackers at Christmas, buy them now. But seriously, so it's across the board. It's like I was just saying too before we turn the mic on. Supposed to be building an addition on my house. When to go order all the materials? March delivery.
Yeah.
Guess who's not building an addition prior to winter?
Yeah,
This
yeah.
guy.
And we've kind of heard that through clients who are building, and it's like, okay, well, why is the home being delayed another 2 months and another 2 months? And it's little things like, oh my gosh, we can't get the siding, we can't get the windows, we can't get the tub surround and all this. And I asked a builder, a really large builder, because my clients is sort of feeling like they're getting a bit neglected here. And he said, here's the thing, the siding arrives at this company and it goes to either, the highest bidder or whoever is there literally banging down their door with a truck and essentially saying, I'm taking it and
Yeah.
driving off with it. And that means that builder got it and every other builder didn't get it. And, for people just their perception of it from the outside is like, well, but things are great. Lots of houses are being built. All those tradespeople are busy.
Numbers are up.
Numbers are up and this and that. But there is an underlying problem there. And another client in the seafood industry was talking about how they lost one container, just one little container of seafood that was lost to spoilage.
Stuck in logistics.
Yeah, it was stuck just waiting to be unloaded. Yeah, unloaded, I guess. And the problem is even if they could get it unloaded, there was no refrigerated storage for it to be kept in. And so they lost like $250,000 worth of seafood due to spoilage. And when you start thinking about what it's going to be like when people are trying to send packages all around the world in these next few months, it is concerning. I'll give you that.
It's across the board. It's everything. I said to you as well. Speaking of food, that's the other thing. It's not just products. It's food-based items. I just talked to somebody who's a coffee company. Couldn't physically get beans for 3 months. Had to lay everybody off. So now he's got a shipment of beans. Do you think he's going to get another shipment before Christmas? No chance. So he's going to sell all these out in 2 weeks, and now he's dead until next year. So what do? You just lay everybody off. You have no money.
Yeah.
And this is happening with everything. So I'm like, Christmas is going to be, it's going to be an interesting turnout. And I think the other thing is everyone's optimistic in North America that like, oh, we always come through and everything just kind of works out. Like, yes, they're running out of siding right now, but eventually they'll catch up and we'll get back to normal. I don't foresee that happening. I think it's going the other way around.
Well, and a lot of it is reliant on international markets, and there's a lot of uncertainty in China right now, and how that is going to trickle across. I mean, remember those memes when that boat got stuck in the Suez Canal?
Yes.
I can't even remember the situation, but a boat got wedged in there and how it messed everything up. Yeah. It's like, really? There's only like one way in and out? Yeah. It's a similar scenario, except like the boats arrive at these container locations and there's just no room for them to be unloaded. Yeah. There's just such a backlog and a lot of bureaucracy at the ports. And then, well, what happens if you just actually, the boats can't even be sent there? And how is that going to affect people? And I'm concerned because a lot of these smaller operators took on debt during COVID. And if people remember some of those debts, they come due. Mm-hmm. Right? Do you remember that? It was like a $40,000 small business loan. 60. And as long as you paid off $30,000, you could keep the remaining 10. And then they extended it to 60 and said there's another 10,000 forgivable. So some people are like, this is sweet.
Free
I'm
money.
Going to borrow 60,000. I pay back 40. I got 20,000 cash. Well, you still kind of do owe the other 40. And if that comes at a point where, regardless of the demand for your business, you don't have the supply to fill that demand, that is going to be a problem. It doesn't matter if you jack prices and all these things because there's a shortage of supply, because then you have the fact of, well, what about job loss and all these things at the same time as rates are going up, at the same time as your debts are coming due.
Everything is coming together. This is a massive mixing pot.
You're talking me into it.
You see what I'm saying? The amount of debt that got extended during COVID is unprecedented.
I've always had concern about that. Yeah.
It's common, I'm telling you.
But I think the personal and small business debt that was extended during COVID, believe it or not, is small compared to the dollar flow of product around the world in a given day.
100%.
Right?
I don't think that's a driving factor. I think it's the combination of all of these things that's contributing to it. I think a lot of small businesses are going to take it to the teeth because of those small things that they did. Again, they are a small portion of the economy, but they are also going to get taken over because they have all this debt that they're carrying. I mean, I'll be honest, I did with my small business. I took out all the money that the government offered. I'm thinking we're going to be able to get through it, but I'm already seeing the same thing. Like the business we're in, we're fortunate where we don't necessarily need product, but I can see how it would get to a position where you aren't able to make that payment back. Yeah,
people are going to have to start sourcing very locally, which could be super cool, but let's be honest, we're not set up for that. Like you cannot get a $5 t-shirt made locally. You just can't.
And see, it's gonna lead into a serious inflation overall, I think, in the long term. And I think long term it's gonna be super beneficial for us as a country because I think it's gonna be a reminder that we do need to do some stuff in house and we do need to bring things back. Just to be controversial, I'll say it's like what Trump was screaming about when he was up. That we need
finally took 17 episodes to get there.
Yeah, the word
Neal
Trump
has just revealed himself to be a Trump supporter. That's gonna be the clip. That's gonna be the clip that we're gonna take.
I'm not necessarily saying that, but I am saying part of his policy of bringing the work back home and bringing business back home and production back home did have some merits, and I don't think people could see what was coming down the pipe.
And I think you had something you want to say about vaccination too? No, I'm just kidding.
You're vaccinated?
No, listen, I don't think the idea of we should try to produce more here domestically is something that I think a lot of people agree with intuitively, but then they also want the benefits of what they can order and online and where these things are manufactured and all this. You can't have it both ways, and it'll be interesting to see.
It's all Jack Ma's fault. Alibaba just screwed us.
Yeah, that's such a cool site. Have you ever done a deep dive on that site?
Yeah, I've ordered all sorts of things for like 25 cents, and I see it 3 to 4 years later. It's fun because it's like I forget that I ordered it because it's been so long, and then a sweater shows up, and I'm like, oh my God, I paid 26 cents for this sweater. It's
amazing.
Yeah.
I remember looking on there, and you could buy multi-unit properties, prefab.
Oh, no.
Or you could buy a motel, and they would ship you a motel in container crates, prefab.
We should order one.
The problem is they don't care about your local code, right, at all.
No.
So, but yeah, you could buy like a prefab motel or like an 8-unit and stuff like that. I don't think so
we have to do one of those.
That'd be pretty sweet.
I'd be in on that.
Total digression.
Yes.
But while we're talking here, I want to talk to you because you were in. Well, not the news, but I don't know where people are listening to this from, but wherever you're at, always subscribe to the local business magazine or whatever that it might be.
I'm sweating.
But Neal was featured in All Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
Were you pulling punches in there? We didn't talk about this ahead of time, but I meant to ask you about this, and here we go.
No, we did. No. Honestly, I kind of went full political when they called because this is the second time I've talked with them, and nothing against them. Good enough guy. I don't even remember what his name is off the top of my head.
I love all Nova Scotia.
Yeah, I love all Nova Scotia too because it's very hyper local and it gives a pretty raw, uncut idea of what's going on in your city. So I agree with you. You should be subscribed and you should follow whatever is your local medium because like CBC is very broad overview. Only major big topics hit there. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of stuff that wouldn't make necessarily national television that is seriously important on your day to day or things that you should know living in a city.
Oh man,
or a town.
seeing new startups, development sites, who's doing what around the city. It's kind of like it's the same thing people get out of LinkedIn, but imagine it being an actual news site.
Much more up to date. Like it's a daily thing, right?
But for context, it was talking about the rent control.
Yeah.
And I was going to have some quotes out or something like this to ask you about, but that you still felt optimistic that this was all going to be good. And then sommone called you out on it today.
I saw that.
Did you see someone respond?
Oh, yeah.
Is it Mr. Andreino?
Yeah, someone roasted me on there.
Mispronounced your name.
Yeah, I saw that. I was laughing. I was going to respond back, and then I couldn't. But anyway, so yeah, to give some context. So I have spoken to them before. Last time I spoke to them, I felt that what I had said was very taken out of context and kind of used, not necessarily against me, but it caused some issues with the current relationships that I had with clients.
Right.
And then my general perception in the market, because I wasn't super whatever when I spoke with them, I was very free. I didn't really think about it. I was like, yeah, I'll just talk openly because that's how they said, like, let's chat openly. Mm-hmm. And I fell for that. So this second time,
I don't think you were duped though. But I understand what you mean. I think you said something like, "Oh, this is a product of some bad actors." I think was the thing. And it's like, that sounded like it was directed at one person because of other articles they had in there, but that wasn't your intent at all. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And the way that the question was asked to me, it was more of a response to what they said.
Yeah,
and then they sliced it out. But anyways. So this time I was a little hesitant, but I said, you know what, I'll do it, but I'm going to stay very political when I do it. And so I had to be careful because I'm not going to go in there and say, oh my God, I think this is the worst, that's the worst, because I knew that it was going to get sliced up. And like I said on the podcast, this article was about rent control and it was asking me how it impacted my business, how it impacts my business moving forward. They see that I'm still acquiring property and they said, well, you said last time due to the rent control, it's going to absolutely stifle your ability to go through this process. And now you're kind of going and contradicting that. And so I was responding basically and saying that I don't disagree with the rent controls. I just don't think the percentages make any sense because inflation and those things are outpacing it and our expenses are greatly outpacing it. But I did say I'm going to have to change my business model, which is true.
Yep.
Just based on unit turnovers.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that.
And so, we really talked about it. So that's what I try to do. Again, it's funny. Like, again, when I see the article, it's like they take sentences and they don't give you the whole background to what was said. And on the flip side, there was things that I thought I tried to push and be like, these are things that I think should get said, like regarding the fact that I felt that a lot of the government policy was designed to benefit larger, bigger, top producing developers or whatever. Yeah. That kind of got lost in the noise. And I don't know if that's because those guys don't want to offend the big developers because they want to be able to interview them and have them on there as well. But that was it. So I wasn't trying to because
I had someone ask me about it. They're like, "Whoa, Neal, what happened? I thought he'd have more fire. Like I thought was more upset." He basically said it was perfectly fine. I'm like, well, I know that's not how he feels, and I
no, and that wasn't a true reflection of how I feel, unfortunately. But I basically had to put my fire out because I knew who I was talking to, and I knew that if I spit fire, that they were going to slice it up and portray me to look like a bit of a crazy person. And I knew that's why they called because they knew last time I was off the cuff, and so this time I was like, political Neal, because I'm not prepared to get roasted on there.
Well, and I think they do a phenomenal job, and I know that I think they also are generally pretty neutral on it. I mean, I know I've written in responses to them to articles where I'm hot.
Yeah.
Right? And, they haven't published them and I'm probably better off for it.
Jeez, you must have been real high because I've said some sketchy shit and they've always reposted it.
Yeah, the old holding off on pressing the old send button.
What was the response that I received here? I'm going to just pop this up while we're doing this.
He just said the guy felt that you did not quite understand what the government was doing. And I think realistically you do. You just maybe were biting your tongue. And interestingly, the guy raised some points to the point that you said that you made and wasn't included in there about that how this is effectively going to create two very different rental markets in the city. There's going to be ultra luxury for these individuals who
class divide
have the option to do high-end new construction, who also now have a provincial task force that'll help advance their approvals.
Stuff. Yep.
And then there's smaller landlords who will be reduced to bare bones maintenance on older stock, and you're going to have really rough housing and really nice housing. That's what they're essentially creating through this, which is going to be difficult to navigate and not good for the market. But people don't want to understand that. They can only see about 2 inches in front of their face.
Yeah.
So be it. But
he said, exactly. It's while I admire Mr. Andreino's optimism, I'm not
Mr.
sure
Andreino.
I'm not sure he grasps what the government is doing. Well, Paul, I do grasp what the government is doing, and unfortunately, I couldn't speak my mind due to the fact that I was being interviewed in a place that I knew it wouldn't all make it out. If it was a video, if we did a sit-down video interview, I would have said everything because I knew then the whole video would go out. But in this case, where I know it's going to get sliced up, I couldn't say it. I 100% agree. Like he said, now basically the government owns these buildings because we can't do what we want. So it's going to be interesting to see how safety and insurance issues impact the situation. And that's what we were talking about before. We said like these are 100%. These buildings, it was all fun and games when it was for a year because it was like, all right, fine, that makes sense. But now they're doing it like 3-4 years. They've now created that extension. That's where it becomes like legitimately deferred maintenance actually starts to take place.
It is not. It is a 2% cap rate. It is also a 2.5 year stop work order.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's a 2.5 year stop work order. And people may not like that, but I mean, you said this before, and people will have their opinions on this regardless. So we're not going to change anyone's minds here, unfortunately. But the people who just don't want to hear the logic of the other side is frustrating. It's like you can get mad at the messenger all you want. We're just telling you factually as people who operate in that space and who know the numbers that this is the reality of one thing causing another. And what's that thing you say when you're like, do you want a friend that tells you look great or a friend that tells you you got a booger on your face?
That's
right? Like, we're just trying to tell you what we know is going to be happening. And there's a reason that all of the people in the industry think it's going to be a problem. Yeah. And the perception is that it's just all greed-based and, oh my gosh, well, they're just upset because they can't raise their profit margins and then they make up all these imaginary things. But this is just
can't buy new fancy cars.
Yeah. Yeah, fancy cars, changing lanes here. No pun intended.
Let's digress. Before we go there, I just want to say one thing. Thanks to Paul for responding to what I was posted on there for.
Yeah.
And I want to say thanks to everyone who's also responded to both Chandler and I. We're actually getting a tremendous amount of response from you guys in direct messages, emails, texts.
Yeah.
And it's huge. We love it. We appreciate it. And like Chandler just said, we want you guys to tell us the honest to God truth. If there's something we said or something you don't like or something we need to improve, tell us. We'd much rather hear that than purely just you telling us it's great, even though you might not think it actually is. So, but you guys have been amazing. Everyone's being super supportive. So it's exciting for us. We're really enjoying it. And we're trying our best to get out content that's going to be good for you guys. And you can actually benefit and learn something and kind of grow from it.
Yeah, and thanks to a couple of you out there who have actually shared it to some people and tagged some people and told them to check it out.
That's huge.
You can do that more, man, I appreciate it. It takes like 2 seconds to fire this thing up on whatever platform you're at, but it makes a world of difference on our back end side of things. But
Chandler will start wearing more costumes if you guys share it more often.
Yeah. That was actually a pretty big hit.
Yeah.
So I didn't hear your car roll in today. Are you having engine problems, Neal?
I have to get a louder exhaust.
Apparently. Yeah. This is a sticking point for us because we joke about vehicles all the time. And someone asked us specifically about fancy vehicles the other day.
Yes. Actually, it's true. A new agent did ask us, with both of us there, our take on new vehicles, or not a new vehicle, sorry. We'll say luxury cars versus, I guess, whatever is considered that. So Chandler and I vary on this. I think in this business specifically, and I don't mean rental housing, I mean being a real estate agent, I think it makes sense to have a car that is considered to be like a luxury vehicle. Now, I don't necessarily think that it needs to be a $150,000 luxury vehicle, but I think slightly above the general consumer vehicle is important for the simple fact of perception of like success and like where your business achieves that. Because in this business, it's very important to basically scream your successes from the rooftops, show that you're killing it. And I found even myself, when I got started in buying real estate before I had my license, I remember a few agents pulled up, and unfortunately, right off the hop, there was a little bit of judgment if they pulled up in something that I didn't perceive as a top vehicle. And I think it was because I knew that a lot of big agents do drive around in certain types of vehicles. So when someone pulled up in a not so top vehicle, I felt that way. And also to put this in context, we can just give our vehicles. So Chandler, what do you drive?
Really nice, reliable 2019 Toyota RAV4.
Yes. Very nice. Black.
Black on black.
Black on black. And then me on the flip side, I drive, I feel like an idiot saying this, but I drive a Mercedes and it's white. Mm-hmm. It is loud. That part has nothing to do with the business. That's my own personal desires. But yeah, so I drive a white Mercedes. I actually think that my car is too far gone. I think my car is actually stupid on the fancy car side of things. I think like the prime optimal vehicle was like a Lexus, which I had before. Again, I bought this car again not for the business. I bought this for a personal desire. So, but yeah, so that's what we drive, and so that's my thing. Is I think I've told a lot of new agents when he asked this question, I said, you know what? I think it's worthwhile for you to upgrade into something that looks a little bit more flashy, because there's an aspect of assumed professionalism, and I feel that a lot of people want to associate themselves and be like, yeah, this guy represents me, or this guy works for me, or this girl represents me.
I understand the logic. Like, you want the person who is working for you to be accomplished in what they're doing, and rightly or wrongly, we associate having a nice car with a certain level of accomplishment or expertise.
Yeah.
The challenge is, and you kind of were hinting about it, it depends on the context. When we're listing $1 million property,
yeah,
maybe we look, dress, act, talk, drive some different way.
Yeah.
But we also list other properties, perhaps more blue collar people who, maybe it's a lower priced product and they're a bit more humble in, their finances, and they can find it a bit offensive when you roll up there in your white Mercedes, and it might alienate them. So my whole thing is, the vehicle that I drive and the way I dress and the way I act isn't to make myself feel good. It's to make other people feel good. I understand this idea of, dress for the job you want, but my whole thing is like present for, the relationship you want to have. And some people don't feel comfortable with that.
Yep.
And, as you say, what's it? Don't buy a Nissan. Don't learn how to buy a Nissan. Or what is it? What's your... we're going to make you say this every 3 episodes.
I know. Don't take advice on how to buy a Rolls Royce from somebody that drives a Toyota Corolla.
Okay. Well, what happens, though, like if someone says, I want to buy a Toyota Corolla, though, I can't take advice from you because you're driving a Rolls Royce. You can't relate to what I'm trying to go through, or I am going through.
But see, I disagree, because I feel like it goes the other way. Like I think somebody can have insight on how to buy something like that, even though they drive the let's say the more expensive vehicle. Again, like I don't think it's a mandatory item. I think it's more of a it's part of it. And I agree with what you're saying, except I just think on a majority basis, like if I took 100 people and then made them pick on which agent purely based on vehicle, of the 100, I would say more than 50 would pick based on the fact that on the fancier vehicle.
Yeah, it depends if you're talking like a fancy vehicle and some hoopty. Like when I first got into the business, I was driving a busted old Sonata, and like there's nothing wrong with Sonatas, but like this thing had 230,000 kilometers on it.
Yeah,
like it was rough, and it got to the point where I was like, man, I've got to upgrade to something else from a perception, because I also want people to feel comfortable when I'm selling their $1 million+ home that I'm someone who understands that product, knows people who would buy that sort of product, and operates in that world, if you will. So I understand your point to give them peace of mind just the same as you'd give peace of mind to someone who maybe has a more modest budget. I guess it's like, where do you draw the line?
100%. I agree with you on that. And again, for me, I don't really, there's nothing against any of those cars. They're all great vehicles. I drove a Cruise when I started in the business. That's actually, my turning point was I pulled up to $1 million lakefront house, cold lead, in my Cruise, and they pulled up in some big giant SUV luxury thing, like whatever it was, some $100,000 SUV. And I could see the immediate look on their face.
Right.
I could just see it as I pulled down the driveway. And the first couple questions were questioning basically what I knew and what I was capable of doing. Immediately.
Yeah, totally.
And I can't help but believe that the fact that I pulled up in a Cruise to that is what immediately set them on a bit of a concerned path.
Right.
And so from that's literally that appointment happened. And then within a couple weeks, I had the Lexus, because I was like, I don't want to be questioned on something like that that's so easily controlled by me. Again, and I wouldn't buy again. I'm not going to go out and buy a brand new Lexus and flex on someone. I'll go out and buy one that's a few years old, because then they can also kind of stomach in their head. They're like, okay, it's probably not a brand new car. It's not like they're going out and being super ostentatious. Again, the car that I have now is too far. That's past the line. I've gone past the line with the vehicle that I drive now. But
gotta reel it in.
Yes, exactly. But I think there is a level of it. But again, it's just it's a general business thing. I don't agree that you have to do it. But I think, again, if we took 100 people and they picked purely based on the vehicle sitting there, they do that. Now, we've actually grown our business on a different scale of we sell a certain amount of knowledge with our business, and I think that's more actually what's growing our businesses. But I think it plays a factor still.
I'm sitting here thinking about this because I don't really talk or get asked about this a lot. But if I'm being honest with myself, I kind of like the fact. Maybe I'm a bit contrarian by nature. I think, if I'm being honest, right? Mm-hmm. And I like the fact that I don't have the nicest office.
Yeah.
You may or may not know that. I don't have the nicest office.
Nice with mine.
And I probably have one of the lesser vehicles on our lot at any time at the office.
Yep.
And I sort of like the fact that, I don't do what other people do. You know, like I dress in a hoodie and blah, 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 blah. And I guess if I'm being honest, like I said, it is a bit of a shtick maybe that I should probably get over and find a better balance. Because your point's not lost on me. I think it does matter a bit. And I do think that Toyota RAV4 is just a really nice vehicle. I need to get a Toyota sponsorship out of this. It's a great vehicle.
I'm in on that.
But maybe I do need to upgrade it, because every now and again I go through that as well, where it's like, okay, we just moved offices, right? And people are just caking out their offices in a major way. I don't know the last time you walked around.
It's insanity.
It's ridiculous. I've never seen like the mini fridge per square footage there is like unsurpassed.
The humidor per square footage.
Oh my God.
We've mini fridges are old news now. It's like humidor wine fridge combinations.
Yeah. It's been a good year in real estate. So people are doing some crazy things. And I'm like, I don't know. I guess I'll just move my desk from the other office. And I took a sofa from at home. But every now and again, I'm like, all right, I should respect my business enough to invest in a space that's inspiring and whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't need a humidor and granite countertops to feel inspired in my workspace, but I think it is important to have a good workspace. And, maybe my vehicle is something that needs to upgrade. We'll see.
I don't know. Again, it's just, I think it just kind of plays into it a little bit. And there is a fine line of going too far. And another thing, like just to finish it off, is when I had the Lexus, I had a 2015 Lexus IS 250. I got compliments on that left, right, and center. Everyone loved it. Clients would want to go in it. Everyone used to talk about the car. And I'd say honestly, 80% of my clients would make a comment positively.
Not getting that anymore.
And yeah, exactly. Now
that white thing.
Now that I have the Mercedes, nobody makes a comment.
Yeah.
Nobody compliments the car. Nobody wants to talk about it. If anything, a few of my clients they do make the comments. Like I had a few listings and like, if I knew you're driving that, I probably would have wanted to sign you for less. Or a few guys like, you're making all the money in these deals. I'm not making anything.
100%.
So, and those are the guys that are speaking out. So I know that the other 80% are probably thinking it in their head and they're not saying it. Whereas when I had the Lexus, again, it was a used, a little bit older Lexus, but it was still nice and clean and I kept it nice. Everyone loved it because they could in their head, I think that's something that's attainable. Yeah. You can look them up. They're 30, 40K. It's really not that crazy of a vehicle. It would have been maybe 5-10 grand more than a Camry. Like it wasn't anything nuts. So I got huge respect on that vehicle. The current one now, again, there's a line and I've crossed it. But again, I didn't buy the car for the business. I didn't buy the car for anybody else. I bought the car for myself. So I don't really care.
And did the gold chain come with the car or that's secondary?
Gift from my grandmother.
Oh, here we go.
Gift from my grandmother, Chandler. Thank you very much. She used to own a jewelry store. Oh, so yes. And she has now passed. So watch yourself. Okay?
Oh man.
Anyways,
lovely. It's lovely.
Yeah. But that's where I'm at with the car thing. On that same note though, it's same with the dressing up.
Yeah.
I'm slowly also fading out of dressing up, but I was also it's also for me it was also kind of like a respect thing for my client. Mm-hmm. And I can't help but remember myself when I started looking for real estate before I had my license. And I don't think I'm an over judgmental person, but it was just something that got backlogged. Like it didn't mean I wasn't going to work with you, but it just like if somebody pulls up in a t-shirt and shorts, I couldn't help but be like, does this guy even give a fuck?
Yeah.
Oh God, we have to bleep that out. But does this guy even care that I'm here? Like, you know what I mean? Like it was, and so it kind of gave me that feel. So I always try my best to make an effort to make sure that I'm suiting up to go and see someone, even if I just have like one appointment in the day. I'm throwing a suit on for the day for that one appointment because I want them to feel that I respect and am prepared to be there. Again, it doesn't have a huge impact, but I think it has a little bit. And what's funny is nowadays I think we're going the other way. It's like every office. It used to be everyone used to go to the office in dress clothes. Now you go to like Google and everyone makes $500K a year and they're all walking around in t-shirt and shorts. Yeah,
which I think is like intentionally contrarian. Like when Mark Zuckerberg goes out there in a blue zip-up hoodie, like some of that is playing a role, right? Yeah. And I did the same thing when I first got my license. I, cut my hair short. I, bought a bunch of cheap suits and colorful ties. And I was doing that for a while. And then every time my clients, because I dealt with people from my sphere, they're showing up in sweats and whatever they're comfortable in. So I slowly over time just kind of dressed how I would dress normally. But people kind of laugh in the office because they see me one way. But when I go out and meet clients, I dress up a little bit more than I do normally, depending on the client. Because again, I feel it's not for me.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm doing it for the comfort of them.
Yeah.
So if that makes them feel more comfortable, it's a generational thing too. Yeah. Right? Like when I'm sitting down with an elderly person in their 80s.
Yeah, you're suiting up.
I'm suiting up because it makes them feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
And I don't mind putting a little inconvenience in my life to make someone else feel more comfortable. Yeah. Everyone's so selfish and self-absorbed nowadays that they're all like, well, I'm not doing something for someone else that they're not comfortable with it, so be it. Like, no, like it takes a little effort to make someone else feel more comfortable. So I do that for some people. But on the flip side, some folks feel more comfortable when I'm dressed down a little bit.
Yeah.
And I do like the idea of being, okay, we're content forward, right? That's what we want to do with this podcast. That's what I want to do with life is like it's content, it's quality forward. Yeah. And the rest is kind of decorative. But
100%. So, you're looking fresh today.
Thanks. Yeah. I ran out of hoodies. My hoodie's in the wash. So here you go.
Anyways, yeah. So that's where I'm at. I'd be curious if someone wants to give us some comments back on what they think about this stuff. Yeah. Especially if you're not like an agent, you're just a consumer. Let us know like what your thoughts are in the cars and all the fancy crap in the show, how you think it impacts your thing. And try and think objectively. Don't just be like, you're stupid because you bought an expensive car or vice versa. Yeah. Try and actually give us like an honest perspective of like, when I get to a showing and they pull up, how does that make me feel?
Yeah. We'll do a poll.
We should do a poll.
My lease is almost up. Do I upgrade the RAV4?
We're going to get... Taylor's getting like something crazy, like a Range Rover, some crazy huge thing.
Yeah, just come back and escalate. Well, that was interesting because when we were talking with our buddy about this and he was picking our brains, because he knows that we do things differently. As much as we, have so many things in common and we don't want this always just be like an echo chamber in here. But he asked you and then he asked me because he knew that we had very differing opinions on this, which got us thinking about a couple other things that we disagree on. Yeah. And one of them that I talked about when I was outlining the refinance that I just went through on a property is that I mentioned that I did all the renovations out of pocket.
Yes.
And you have said before on this podcast, you should never do the renovations out of pocket. You should always do it with borrowed funds.
Yes.
And I agree with that if it's standard lending, institutional money. I'm less inclined to private money. I've never taken a dime of private money. I've done VTBs. That's not private money though. I've never done quote unquote private hard money lending for any of my properties, but I know you have.
A lot.
Yeah. So
almost all of it.
Tell us why you've done that and why you believe in it, and would you do it now if you didn't have to?
I just took a big deep breath here to get ready for this one.
Okay.
So, yes, you haven't done it. Here's kind of my thing. So, yeah, exactly what Chandler's saying is he's bought with more conventional loans and then he spent the money to renovate. Now, we're doing renovations that are typically quite expensive because it's multiplied by units. So even if it's $30,000, it's an 8 unit, it's going to cost you $250,000 to get that thing turned over. When I got started, which was only a couple of years ago, really in buying these actual buildings, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, I don't have $250,000 of cash available at my resource to just do something like that. And additionally, like a lot of these buildings are under rented and there's issues with them. A lot of banks might not necessarily do 25% down or anything like that. And so you can't necessarily come up with 35 to 50% of a building's value. Private lenders will look past a lot of these things as long as you provide them with basically a strong plan of how you're going to take their money, turn it into what it needs to be, and then get them paid back.
So do you do that for both some of the down payment or just for the renovation, or both?
Well, so here's the thing. So I use it for almost everything, depending on what it is. So like to get started, dealing with vendor takebacks. So on buying, a lot of banks won't go in second place to a vendor takeback, like really none. Or some of them won't even entertain any vendor takeback, even in like second place. They say if we're in first, you can't put somebody in second behind us.
And just to recap for some people, so obviously the purchase is 100%. In a lot of cases, the bank is going to require some form of 25% down. So if you, as the buyer, put down 15, for example, the seller could hold a note for the other 10%, kind of like an IOU, and that's what we're referring to as a vendor takeback. Not all banks like that because they're saying, no, we want you to have 25% in, and you're basically saying that you only have 15% in. And worse than that, if we have to foreclose on you, there's someone else over here chomping at the bit trying to foreclose on you to get their piece of the pie. Yeah. And the position rank, first position, second position, third position, is kind of who gets paid out first. So the bank always wants to be in first position. Yeah. The vendor has to understand they're typically going to be in second position, but sometimes, depending on the structure of the deal, they want to be in first position. And if they're in first position, no institutional conventional lender is going to touch you because they're not going to be in second position to anyone other than themselves.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Exactly. So that right there, like, there's so many little things that I'm gonna go over that impacts it. I attribute 100% of my growth today to the fact that I was able to utilize private lending to the way I did, and I don't intend to keep using it. I'm slowly working my way out of it and getting them paid out, but it allowed me to get in where I was able to get vendor takebacks, potentially put the vendor in first place if that was a requirement. And then I'd get the loans to cover the rest of the building. They always want to see some money in as well, but they're willing to go to higher LTVs.
Like 85-15, 90-10?
85-15 usually. And then on top of that, they will cover a good portion of the reno, like more like 85% of the reno. And the big thing you need to understand, like, yeah, the money's 10, 12%, but if you factor that into your budget, right? Like you have your budget, okay, it's $1 million for the buy, $500,000 for the reno. So let's say you're borrowing around $1.5 million. You know, it's going to take you a year to do it. 10%, you're going to spend $150K on interest. You throw that in your budget, like include that in your budget. They'll even help to kind of finance and cover it. Like some of them will either do an interest reserve or they'll build it in there. So you kind of, when you get your draws, it's already built into the fact that a portion of it goes back, right? So that allowed me to grow rapidly and get the money because financing is the hardest part on these when you're getting started.
100%.
And so they allowed me to do it. The other thing is their pace. Like when you deal with some of these other more conventional lenders, I need a draw. They're going to want to send in an appraiser. It's going to take the appraiser a couple days, if not a week, to get everything turned around. Then it's going to take them a couple days. They might have some questions. It goes back and forth. You're not seeing money for 2 weeks from the day that you ask for it. Maybe a week if things are bang on, but 2 weeks. Honestly, 2 weeks. Private lender, you can build a relationship with them. They'll just send out one of their own guys, or you get to a relationship where you don't even need that. You can send them pictures. They'll have the money with you in 24 hours or same day. I've messaged my private lender 10 a.m. in the morning, 3 p.m. the money's in my account. Right? So when you're in a pinch, like this stuff gets stressful, right? Like when we started, I know when I started, I was like scraping a negative. Like I had no money. I was every single dime was going to these buildings.
Yep.
To be able to get a draw like that, knowing that I had like a bunch of payments coming out the next day and all that, was extremely important to being able to keep operating and growing the business and going forward. And the other thing is they can be super flexible. So like right now I was making a purchase and I couldn't get my refinance takeout completed in time to close on the next property. They were able to provide a bridge loan. And like 2 days before closing, I'm able to call them. They gave me the bridge, no problem. Yes, it's expensive. I'm going to pay percentage and fees to get the money. I'm going to pay the broker fees to get the money. And then I'm going to have to pay them fees to close it out. So it cost me $35,000. But the opportunity cost of losing that deal or my deposit or all the other items, way, way, way more. So that aspect, as long as you budget it in and you understand what it's going to cost you, then I think it's an amazing opportunity to go up. If you don't have to use it though, then there'd be no reason to use it. Like don't pay 12% interest just because like it's the easy button.
Yeah.
Pay necessity. It because there's a value, like there's a necessity there.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess one of the things, and I totally agree with you. And in hindsight, I wish I had used private money early on. My concern always was I didn't trust my other income enough to carry that private money if need be. And we're now very fortunate that I can kind of float a lot of these renovations just out of pocket and avoid that carrying cost. On the flip side, you're very fortunate that you have other sources of income where you can cash flow at least to cover the debt servicing on there, or at least, again, it's built into the loan that's like, okay, we're advancing you this $50,000 and $7,000 of that is essentially coming back to them in the form of an interest installment payment. Yeah. But it's a bit different when someone has no other cash flow coming in whatsoever.
100%. Right? And that's what I warn a lot of people, because a lot of my friends and colleagues ask me, like, how in the world are you doing this? And I'm like, I'm making that $15,000 a month payment out of my own pocket. every month, and that was super, super hard. And that's what I mean. When the first couple that I did, it was stressful as all hell. Like I was scraping by to make those payments every month, and I had to get to that point. So yeah, now I'm fortunate; it's much easier, and I'm slowly closing out all the private money. But that's why I say if you're going to do it, you need to run it in your budget. You need to run those numbers, and you say, okay, I'm prepared to pay $5,000 a month for those 6 months or 10 months, and always go over. Like you say, you're gonna be done your renovation in 6 months. Okay, cool. So 12 months, you're gonna be doing your renovation. Like that's how you need to budget it. And again, you can work with the bank. These guys, these private lenders know what you're doing. If you come to them with a strong plan, they'll respect what you're bringing them, and they'll work with you. So if you say, look, I'm borrowing $500 for reno, let's make it $600. Then when you give me my draws, I'm covered for my interest, right? The biggest item is you need to show them that there's equity and value in that building, right? And that's where these as complete appraisals come in. They're like, whenever I get an appraisal on a building, I always get the as complete done right there at the start. Even though I know in 12 months there's a good chance that it's going to be a different number than what they're giving me there, it gives me a lot of strength to show that there is an upside on the building today, even if it's not as much as what I truly believe.
Yeah.
As long as it's enough to help show the bank that they have some sort of way out of this thing.
Yeah, you're selling them on the exit strategy, which is what we talk about so much, is how to get out from underneath this, be it the original loan, the short-term money, or what have you. But they also, from their perspective, they want to get off the deal as quickly as they can. They want to be paid on, they want to get off the deal. The other advantage you have, and this why this wasn't a fit for me, is because you've got this system in place through your contracting company that you can prepare a package and budget probably and offer that to them as a plan better than most people would be able to do. It's not just as simple as, well, I'm just going to go out and get $500,000 in private money.
Yeah.
If someone will give that to you with no plan, I'd be extra concerned about that. But if they give it to you and you don't have a plan, that could get really dicey in a hurry. I don't own a contracting company, and it took a while for me to build up a team of people who I felt I could trust, and I have them now where I'd be in a better position to say, okay, here is the actual expense and draw schedule for the length of the project. I kind of more shoot from the hip with some of my renos, so it takes a little while to find out, all right, what exactly are we per unit? What are we doing material-wise on each one? And of course, things change. And I was always concerned of having someone accountable to that someone that it stays on a budget and that it's timely, because there's a lot of unpredictability in there. And when you don't have your own contractors or your own company, it's hard to model that out.
100%. I agree. Part of me disagrees, to be honest with you. And the only reason, I don't want people to think that they can't do this unless they have their own contracting company and a cash flow of $15,000 a month and all that, because I don't think that's true. I think it can be done. It's a little more difficult. But even doing the contracting and having the contracting company, my first reno, I under budgeted by $200K, which was 40%. I just missed by 40%. And that's even having my own contracting company, my own guys doing a lot of the work. So you're still going to make those mistakes, and that's kind of part of it. The nice thing, again, with a private lender, so you miss by $200K, you can go to them and explain that. Again, if you can show that the as complete value is there and where the money's going and that you're actually getting the work done, they will extend it to you. I'm doing the same thing on another project, one of my original projects that I bought with not a private lender. It was a construction bank, but it's at 4%, and they have construction monitors and this and that. And so I screwed up the budgeting. Mm-hmm. I spent the last 3.5 months going back and forth trying to get a draw out of them. And they're they want to see all these things, and they're breaking it all down, and they're going on and on and on. I just ended up finishing the whole project out of pocket.
This is the other reason.
And I'm refinancing now, and I never got a draw.
And it's interesting to hear that you had that experience with a conventional lender as opposed to a private lender, because that was even why I don't love rolling them into my conventional mortgages either. Yeah. Because I don't know if you've ever had, well, of course you have at this point, but you fill out those damn financial summaries every year for these lenders and all this stuff. And it's the same reason that going through CMHC is a headache. They're on you. And it's good in the sense that it makes you better accountable and better organized. But sometimes you can't rationalize with these people. And if you don't get it right the first time, it's hard to go back to that well and explain why you need more money from them. And as soon as they start
questioning it, they start shutting down.
They're also going to charge you fees and all of this, and you get delays. And your contractor's going to want to get paid regardless, as they should. So this is why I've sort of been resistant to doing it, and I haven't needed to, but it has certainly stifled my growth. I'm sure I could have done things a lot quicker. Changing now where we don't have as much certainty out there in the market with timelines. Yeah. This was my other thought is oh my gosh, what if something goes sideways and I can't get to my exit strategy? I can't get to my as complete in the 12 months, because 12 months turns to 18 months really easily. Yeah. And with what's going on in the world right now, if you can't get those tubs, if you can't get this, if you can't get the tenants out of that 18 months could be 2.5 years. Yeah. That's a long time to carry that money.
Yeah, and that's a big thing to consider now. So again, when I first started doing it, I was buying vacant buildings that I knew I could turn over in a certain period of time. Again, I missed all my timelines, so I had to do renewals. I under budgeted a bunch of times, so I lost, I don't even want to know, hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest that I should have. That it was my screw ups on timelines and budgets. And now where we're facing this new rules that has impacted that. My bigger thing now too is they do interest only, which makes it a little bit better. And as unfortunate as it is, basically I look at it now as some of these buildings that I bought recently on private money. Well, my interest only payment's $5,000. The building brings in $6,000. So by the time I pay all my bills, it basically just covers it, and I'm gonna have to float that. It sucks, but it's kind of part of the game. I know that if I want to grow at the pace that I'm growing at, I have to work with these guys because regular banks just aren't going to step in, and or they won't do the, let's say, creative style lending that I'm utilizing to get some of these places. Because I am big on vendor takebacks. Again, my first 3 or 4 places all had vendor takebacks. Like I didn't have the cash to do it. Like I always joke. I mean, I'll say it, Spencer Ave. I ended up technically buying that entire street effectively without a dime out of my pocket.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like that sounds nuts. And I mean, we maybe dive into this later on, but I had to do
that should be your unpacking one day.
Yeah,
like,
I'll go over that one day and unpack the whole thing and how I did that. But that, and again, I wouldn't be able to do that with any other lender because any other lender would have looked at it and seen what I was doing and been like, no chance. Versus I created this package and plan and showed it to the private and they're like, yeah, that makes sense. They were nervous. They told me after I was done, they were like, we thought you were gonna go belly up on this. But now that I've proven it, like it worked out really well, and now they're willing to work with me more. But that's the thing. Like I found you could actually talk to them, and the pace is there, and so you can kind of work with the numbers, and they'll make it happen. And also the other thing I think a lot of people forget, these guys are not in the business of taking your real estate. They're really not. I know, like everyone's told, like all private lender, like they're gonna foreclose on you. They do not want to foreclose on you. Like they're gonna threaten you that they're going to, so that you pay your bills and or do your renewals or whatever. But they do not want your property. Like they don't want that business. Like I know so many people that have been dragging on for years, not even making payments, and they still haven't lost their property. I'm not suggesting that you do that, but the private lender does not want that property back.
Well, why would they when the property doesn't make money, but they can make 12% on the interest?
Exactly.
Right? Like
they'd rather try and help you
business.
find someone to step in. Like I see a lot of them. They'll try and find, like even the private lender will call me sometimes and be like, hey, like we have this client that's struggling with this place. Do you want to take it over and finish it off? Right? Because they'd rather see someone step in that can finish it and get it closed out and get everyone's money back than closing on the property that's half finished or isn't worth what they're into it for, all those kinds of things. So you can work with them. Again, I know we said in I think it was last episode that I said the bank's not your friend, but you can, the private lender, it's a business. You guys are working together as partners more so than just they're giving you money and they're telling you that we want to screw you. Yeah,
every now and again I have someone approach me and they've come into some sort of windfall or they've got access to capital and they're like, oh, I want to get into real estate sort of, blah, blah, blah. But I can tell they're not really in it. And I tell them, lend the money.
Exactly.
If you want to be involved in real estate and be very arm's length, and be very transactional, lend the money.
Do it through a broker.
Oh, man. Yeah, do it through a broker because there's things like, the lender can have a life insurance policy that pays you out and all these sort of things. If you go through the proper avenue, it's not like meeting a guy with a briefcase full of money. It's very organized and accountable. But there are people that I know that have just access to 2% line of credits. And so they max out a 2% line of credit and lend it out at 10% plus a 4% fee.
Yeah.
Right? So their effective rate is quite a bit higher and they make their minimum interest payments while someone else pays them a lot more. It's a pretty good return for someone who might have access to that and is thinking, well, I like the idea of investing in real estate, but I don't necessarily want to be a landlord property manager.
Yeah.
Be a money lender. It's pretty good.
That's big business. That's something we can also talk about another time, just how a broker handles that, how they basically will help you lend your money out so you're secured, all the contracts are legit and legal. So you're literally giving an actual mortgage, just the same as any other bank. You're giving an actual mortgage. So you're covered in a lot of ways. Again, things can still take place where you might actually have to foreclose on a property and it could be worth less than what you guys are hoping. But in general, they have a lot of systems in place to help cover you and make it a legitimate thing. And on average, they get paid back. Like there's more that get paid back than default. So
yeah, it's interesting how many different ways you can make money through real estate without even owning the real estate. Another one is finder's fees and assignments. Yeah. And we've been talking a bit about those lately because as soon as you're in, this is the greatest thing about kind of like getting into it and getting your feet wet and buying a property here and there is that all of a sudden people start to know you're looking as a buyer and start sending deals across your desk. Yeah. And some of them are very smart and they say, I already have the deal. You just need to pay me out
sell you this contract.
either by way of an assignment or a finder's fee. I know you're more big on assignments, and I like assignments perfectly fine too, but I also like finder's fees. I mean, anytime I talk to someone, they're like, oh, I manage this many properties, right? For, just some old dude with like a truck with a plow at the front, but turns out he manages 1,500 units across the city. I'm always like, hey man, you bring me a building, you tell me what you want to get paid, and we'll make it happen. That's a finder's fee. Right. And anyone out there listening that happens to know of a building and you can't put it together, you want to make some scratch off it because there's going to be other deals come along. You don't want to sit on something and get nothing out of it. You can get a finder's fee, which effectively you connect A with B, and you have an agreement that there is going to be a fee paid to you by the buyer, cash in pocket if that deal goes together.
Take it to Chandler, then whenever he offers you as a finder's fee, bring it to me and I'll double it. No, don't. But yes, actually call. In all seriousness, if you guys do have something, definitely call us. We can both offer you a finder's fee.
But it's an interesting way. People are like, right, how can I make money in real estate? There's another little angle.
Well, so here's the even more interesting one as well. So if that's how finder's fees work, assignments, very similar, a little bit different, and you do assume a little bit more risk in doing so. But a lot of times there's also an opportunity to increase the amount of money that you make.
Totally.
So on a finder's fee, you might get a flat fee of $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, maybe $50,000.
If that, like I find like, if it's pre-existing older stock, like $500 a door, $1,000 a door, right? Like so on a 12 unit,
$12,000,
$6,000, $12,000, depending on what it is. And depending on how good the deal is. Right. Which is nothing to balk at. If you can't buy that property, or if you happen to come across something in your day-to-day life, like, man, I can't buy this, but let's see, 18 units, I can make $18,000 off this by one phone call. It's not bad. But an assignment,
you can make a substantially larger amount of money for the simple fact that as long as the property can appraise to cover that amount, the person purchasing can take a loan against that assignment value, which means it's less out of their pocket. So for example, myself this year, I've paid out almost $250,000 in assignment fees to buy some of these properties. And and I'm not feeling the pain in the sense of like, I have to pay out $250,000 cash. I only had to pay out $50,000 because I only had to pay about 25% of that.
Yeah. And it's $800 a month.
So the way that works is, let's say you did find this 12 unit and they're asking $1 million and you call Chandler and he says, I'm willing to pay 1.2 million, or you tell him it's 1.2 and he says, I'll pay that. You can put it under contract at $1 million, then redo a new contract between yourself and Chandler for 1.2 million. Now you're not getting paid until that deal closes, and you're assuming the risk because on closing day, if Chandler for some reason doesn't show up with $1.2 million,
you better have $1 million to close that thing.
That seller doesn't give a crap. The seller only signed with you for $1 million, so he's going after you for $1 million. You're going to have a deposit in, and if you don't do it, he can sue you for all that stuff and the damages and everything on and on and on. So you take on a way more risk on that front. So I typically say to anyone, if you want to do this, like be prepared to close on this
thing. To own that building.
Yeah, to own that building. You need to be ready to go to buy that thing, and then you have the option to sell it off to somebody else. But it can be great business, and it's do you know where it became, I think like in Canada at least, it grew like massive popularity, and you saw it a lot. It was condos. Condos in Toronto.
We talked about this.
It's insane. Like there's so many going up, and they take 2 to 3 years to build. So people would pre-construction put them under contract at $500K. Then by the time closing day comes, somebody's willing to pay $700 because the building right next door is now selling them for $700 because it was 3 years later.
Yeah, you sell the contract.
So you just sell the contract. You never actually close on that condo. So sometimes you'd get away with, actually in Toronto, their deposits are quite big. So you probably had to put down 25%. So you probably put in $100K over 3 years. And then on closing day, you get back a check for 100 plus 200, so you get $300K back. So
yeah, we had someone come through our office and approach us about this, and I think we talked about it briefly on an episode. But you're right, it happened a lot in pre-construction condos where everyone knows you don't need the full 100% until the place is built and you get the keys. So you put 25% down, and then you wait until someone wants it way more than what you paid for it. Maybe it's $500,000. Someone comes along, they would be willing to pay $700,000. You say, well, I will sell you this contract for that unit because I've got first dibs. I've got it under agreement to you for $700,000, provided that the value now supports that and they can get a loan on that. They buy it essentially in one transaction. They buy it from you for $700,000 simultaneous to you buying it from the seller for $500,000.
Yeah.
And on a bigger scale, people do that with income properties. Someone comes across a good deal. Maybe they don't want to just kick a finder's fee to someone. What they do is they tie it up for $1 million.
Yep.
But they know that they could find someone willing to pay $1.2 million for that, and they put the agreement in their names or assignee, and they assign the agreement to the new buyer. Again, the challenge is it has to support the new appraisal. So it has to be something that they got a below market deal on. But as the end buyer, you often don't care. Like if you're making money off it, the seller, they agreed to sell it to you for that price. I don't much care. But what Neal's getting at is why that's sometimes better than the finder's fee is a finder's fee you have to pay out of pocket. If someone brings me a deal and it's a great deal and I've got to pay them $20,000-$30,000 for it, that's coming right out of the pocket. If they bring me a deal that's already in a contract and I can just purchase it conventionally, the fact that I have to pay an extra maybe $100,000, $200,000 on the price point, it's not a big deal because it's not coming out of my pocket, right? Yep. Like it doesn't matter to me. But the flip side is, yes, they may be making $200,000 instead of $30,000, but if I don't come through or if no one else buys it, they've got to buy that property.
They're probably losing their deposit and
whatever deposit they put in with
for a lot more.
Yeah. So it's high risk with assignments, but higher potential reward. And I don't mind the finder's fee because I don't mind just paying liquid cash to someone.
Running the deal yourself.
The tricky thing too with the finder's fee system is, you don't have, someone else could scoop you.
Yeah.
I mean, we would never scoop someone who brought us a deal because then they're never going to bring a deal again.
Yeah.
But if that seller's shopping it to you, or if you know about it and you can flip it to someone else, well, what if someone else finds out about it and you get scooped and all of a sudden, you did this work, you found this deal and you don't get paid off it. By putting it under contract and then assigning it, you've got that first right of refusal. You've got that property locked up. You just need to have long timelines so that someone else can get it closed in time.
I was going to say, big giant asterisk with the assignments. Two things are, on top of doing an assignment, like you better have your stuff in order because they need to do their due diligence, right? Like, so you need to be able to, well, I have to come in for an inspection, but you're not actually coming in for an inspection. You're a buyer that's doing it. And a lot of times sellers aren't super keen to find out that their property is being flipped to somebody else for another couple $100,000. And they can then, in their contract, say that there's no assignments allowed. Yeah. And so they can stifle your deal. So you really need to know what you're doing and having all your ducks in order to be able to pull it off. So it is, let's say, easy money, but it can also be very difficult. You have to have a ton of trust in your buyer that's buying it from you to be able to handle it. It's a massive risk, huge reward relative to what you have to put in. Really, it could just be time. You don't ever have to put any money in. But if you
got to put a deposit in, and
which you can charge from your buyer, though, right?
Yeah. So, if you find them quick order. Right, if you have a 6-week due diligence and third week, fourth week, you still haven't found your end buyer. Yeah, you're starting to sweat there, right? Like you might have to back out of that deal before your 6-week timeline.
Exactly, and that is very common. The other thing to consider, obviously, is the new rules in our new bill, Bill of Housing Rights or whatever it was called. They have an intention to basically ban assignments.
I think they're going to come after it.
And it was targeting, I think it's targeting the condo market, at the pre-con market or pre-construction. But I think it's going to apply to everything. And so you're going to see it across the board, I think.
I don't know that it will apply to everything. Commercial operates in its own world, man.
It does.
Like the same thing we were talking about vendor takebacks. You cannot do that on residential mortgages. It is a different world.
True.
So I don't know.
My concern becomes... So the seller's always going to find out, even on closing day. At the end of the day, the seller finds out because their lawyer is actually putting the deed in somebody else's name than what's on the contract.
Yeah,
so
and they may care, they may not.
And if assignments are banned, I can see it now. It's going to get to closing day. The seller's going to find out, and they're going to go ask my lawyer, what can I do about this? The lawyer's going to be like, well, technically assignments are illegal. And so then they can. And
to be clear, that's not the case currently. That's something
not.
they were talking about, and predominantly, they weren't even explicit about this, but it's predominantly to curb the speculative pre-construction buying in Dartmouth and Vancouver. Right?
Toronto and Vancouver.
What? Dartmouth.
Dartmouth? I like your optimism. I like where you're going with this.
Dartmouth
One day. It's sweet. They're going to be throwing up all those big towers and Ys.
Yeah, Toronto and Vancouver.
This guy's
and other markets.
A little biased living
world,
in Dartmouth. Eh?
So, I mean, maybe I will buy... Maybe it's time to upgrade the vehicle.
Common, again, it's the same thing. In this market, it's become common. It's huge in Toronto. It's become common here because I think a lot of people from Ontario are coming here and doing it here now. And so I'm getting people calling me all the time like, hey, I got this, hey, I got this, I got that.
And some people did it inadvertently. I mean, we rolled out a few condos a couple of years ago that had really major launches. I remember Southport was a big launch.
Yep.
Harris East was a big launch.
Yep.
And you'd go into these places and you'd put down your little deposit, and it took 2 years to build them. Yep. And I knew people who got divorced in the 2 years that it took to get the thing built.
Yeah.
And then they effectively were selling it and made money, but they hadn't put it in that it could be assigned. So they had to actually close on it and then resell it, which means you get hammered with, paying your legal fees and all this stuff. But that has happened a little bit here, this idea of assigning smaller deals. But what we're talking about is for larger properties, and it's a really interesting way that people out there can make money off of real estate other than owning it. Because if assignments go well, you don't own the property.
No. And it can be, again, super lucrative, but there is definitely a huge amount of risk. You want to have all your ducks in order to do it. I did a reassignment this year as well. That's how I stomached the fact that I paid reassignment fees. Is I did one being the reassignee earlier this year. So that was a tough one because it was a multi-property, multiple seller.
3 different buyers, wasn't it?
3 different buyers, 4 different sellers, 3 different properties.
Yeah.
Very intense. And it actually all closed in the same day.
Yeah.
Craziness.
Right on.
But maybe we'll talk about that another time.
Cool. Yeah. In terms of takeaways today, like I was saying, I think maybe I'll get a nicer car. Maybe we'll have an update for people in the next few months.
Ooh.
Might have a nicer vehicle. We'll see about the private money.
I mean, you're at a position now I don't think you necessarily need to get into private money. But I think for a lot of people listening, if you're trying to make that jump, it can be a really strong and good option. But you got to make sure you run all your numbers and you're prepared, like everything, like blow your budgets out of the water, blow your timelines out of the water. Because you want to be prepared for that. Yeah, and then assignments. Another thing to look into if you're interested in that kind of a thing. It is a high stress business, but it can be super, super lucrative. And you can start with something smaller. Like you said, like a condo is nice because it might take 2 years to build. Unfortunately, in Halifax, the 1 or 2 condo projects that are available pre-con explicitly say no assignments in them.
Really? Okay,
Yes.
I haven't looked at them, but that doesn't surprise me.
I have looked at them, and they literally will be like, no chance. Like it says right in the contract, you cannot reassign these.
Yeah.
So you can't really do it in Halifax, but again, it's something that they do quite openly in Toronto. Mm-hmm. So yeah, something to consider. And then I think the final thing is to just watch out for the global economy.
Yeah. We'll tackle that in another episode.
That's like a 3-episode
preaching,
thing.
man. He's on the
I'm going to be
here.
freaking out. I am freaking out.
Well, give us a lot of content to talk about. So keep watching, smash the like button, give us some feedback, and share this. If you get a chance to share this on whatever platform you subscribe to, send the
greatly appreciate for the ones that have shared it and everyone that's sending the feedback and commenting. We're loving it.
Yeah. All right. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Thanks for listening.
When I was broke, I had rich habits.